You're in a conversation with someone you've met before, maybe more than once. You remember their face clearly, the way they laugh, something they told you about their life, a detail about their job or their dog or the city they grew up in. You remember the feeling of the conversation. You remember liking them. And then someone nearby says their name, and it lands in your ears like a word you've never heard before. Completely foreign. Completely gone. And for a moment you do that thing, that very specific internal scramble, where you run back through everything you remember about this person, searching for the name that should be attached to all of it, and finding nothing. Just a pleasant, detailed, warm memory of a person whose name has vanished as completely as if it was never there. The feeling that follows is its own specific flavor of social discomfort. Not quite embarrassment. Not quite guilt. Something closer to a quiet bewilderment at your own mind. Because you're not someone who doesn't care. You weren't distracted when you met them. You're a reasonably attentive person. And yet the name is simply gone, and you'll spend the rest of this interaction maneuvering carefully around it, avoiding the moment you'd have to use it, praying someone else says it first, constructing entire sentences specifically to sidestep the 3 letters or syllables that should be sitting right there and aren't. Most people who experience this regularly have been told some version of the same story about themselves. That they're not paying attention. That they're self-absorbed. That names just aren't a priority for them. Sometimes people say it gently, framed as a tip. You just need to repeat the name when you hear it, use it in a sentence, make a mental association. As if the problem is technique. As if the solution is simply trying harder, being more present, caring more about the people in front of you. That story, the one that turns a neurological reality into a character assessment, is one of the more quietly damaging ones that gets passed around as social wisdom, because it takes something that has almost nothing to do with caring and turns it into evidence that you don't. What's actually happening is far more interesting, far more specific, and far more human than any of that. Let's start with what memory actually is, because the popular understanding of it is almost entirely wrong, and that misunderstanding is exactly why the name-forgetting story gets told backwards. Memory is not a recording. It is not a filing cabinet. It is not a storage system that captures everything equally if you just pay enough attention. Memory is a reconstruction, an active, selective, deeply personal process that prioritizes certain kinds of information over others based on a set of criteria that your brain developed long before you had any say in the matter. And one of the most consistent findings in cognitive neuroscience is this: the brain does not store names and faces through the same neural systems. They are processed separately, encoded separately, and retrieved separately. This is not a theory. It is one of the most replicated findings in memory research, documented extensively by neuropsychologist Andrew Young and elaborated on across decades of subsequent study. What this means, practically, is that recognizing a face, feeling the familiarity, the warmth, the sense of knowing, is a fundamentally different cognitive process than retrieving the arbitrary label that was attached to that face at some point in the past. Faces are processed holistically, in a dedicated region of the brain called the fusiform face area, which is exquisitely sensitive to the kind of complex visual information that human faces carry. Names, by contrast, are arbitrary phonological labels, strings of sound that have no inherent connection to the person they represent. Your brain has no natural hook for them. There is nothing about the sound Michael or Sarah or James that semantically connects to the human being standing in front of you. The connection is entirely artificial, entirely learned, and therefore, for many people, far more fragile than the rich web of contextual, emotional, and visual information that surrounds it. This is why you can remember everything about someone and nothing about their name simultaneously. It is not a contradiction. It is the predictable output of a brain using 2 completely different systems to store 2 completely different kinds of information, and one of those systems is dramatically better resourced than the other. But this only explains the mechanics. It doesn't explain why some people experience this far more intensely and consistently than others. And that difference, the gap between the person who forgets the name by the time the handshake ends and the person who locks it in immediately and permanently, is where the psychology gets genuinely interesting. For people who forget names easily and consistently, what's almost always happening in those initial moments of meeting is that the brain is doing something else. Something it has been trained, through experience and temperament and often through specific developmental history, to prioritize with tremendous efficiency. It is reading the person, not their name. The person, their affect, their energy, the micro-expressions moving across their face, the emotional temperature of the room, what this interaction feels like, whether this person is safe, interesting, warm, guarded. The brain is doing what it does best, what it has always done best, and the name, announced once, briefly, in the first few seconds of what is actually a very complex social and emotional experience, gets processed by a secondary system that simply wasn't given enough resources to hold it. Neuroscientists studying attention have documented this through what they call attentional resource theory, the idea that conscious attention is a finite resource, and that the more cognitively and emotionally engaged a person is, the less processing capacity is available for tasks that require deliberate encoding. For people whose brains are highly attuned to interpersonal cues, who pick up emotional information quickly and automatically, who are processing the subtleties of a new person with real depth and speed, the name announcement happens in the middle of a significant cognitive event. And it simply doesn't get the bandwidth it would need to stick. There is also a significant relationship between name forgetting and what psychologists call absorption, a trait that describes the tendency to become deeply immersed in present experience. People who score high in absorption are genuinely more present in the moment of meeting someone than people who score low. They are more fully inside the experience. And paradoxically, that deep presence is precisely what prevents the metacognitive step required to deliberately encode the name. The brief mental pause of saying the name back to yourself, associating it, filing it. That step requires stepping outside the experience slightly, treating it as information to be captured rather than a moment to be inhabited. For deeply present people, that step is genuinely hard. Not because they're not paying attention, because they're paying too much of it to everything else. Root this in development and it becomes even clearer. The brains that are most likely to prioritize interpersonal reading over arbitrary label encoding are almost always brains that learned early that reading people mattered. That the emotional temperature of a room was important information. That understanding what someone was feeling, or what kind of mood a parent was in, or whether a situation was safe, that this kind of reading was worth investing cognitive resources in. For many people who forget names consistently, there is often a developmental history that made social and emotional attunement a highly practiced skill. Not necessarily because of trauma, though sometimes that's part of it. More often simply because of temperament, family environment, social experience. A repeated early lesson that people are complex and worth reading carefully. The brain learned what mattered. It learned to prioritize. And it prioritized wisely, given the world it found itself in. The fact that the world later turned out to place enormous social value on remembering the arbitrary label attached to a person, and relatively little visible value on the extraordinarily sophisticated interpersonal reading that was happening simultaneously, is a mismatch between what the brain was optimized for and what the social environment rewards. That is not a character flaw. It is an alignment problem. It is also worth naming clearly that this has nothing to do with intelligence, and nothing to do with caring. Some of the most interpersonally attuned, emotionally intelligent, genuinely caring people in any room are the ones quietly panicking because they cannot remember the name of someone they've had 3 meaningful conversations with. The caring and the forgetting coexist not in spite of each other but because of each other. The same orientation that makes someone deeply present with people, genuinely interested in who they are rather than what they're called, is the same orientation that deprioritizes the label in favor of the person. Here is the counterintuitive layer that rarely gets examined. The people who are best at remembering names, who lock them in immediately, who use them fluently throughout a conversation, who never experience that internal scramble, are often doing something that feels like warmth and is actually, neurologically, a mild form of distance. Remembering a name requires treating the moment of meeting as, in part, an information capture task. It requires holding part of your attention outside the experience, in a metacognitive space where you are managing the interaction as well as inhabiting it. People who do this naturally are not more present. They are, in a specific sense, less present, and that slight distance is precisely what gives them the cognitive space to encode the label cleanly. This is not a criticism of them. It is simply the other side of the trade-off. Every brain optimizes for something. The brain that encodes names efficiently has learned to stay slightly above the experience. The brain that forgets names consistently has learned to go fully inside it. Both orientations have real costs. Both have real value. Neither is the correct way to be in a room with another human being. What changes when you understand this, really understand it, not as an excuse but as an accurate description of what's happening, is the quality of the shame that usually surrounds it. That quiet self-judgment that activates every time a name disappears. The story you tell yourself about being rude, inattentive, self-centered, careless. That story was never accurate. It was a misreading of the evidence. And misreadings, once corrected, tend to lose their grip. You were not absent in those moments. You were present in a way that your brain has always been present, fully, interpersonally, with real attention and real interest directed at the actual human being rather than the label attached to them. The name slipped not because you didn't care, but because you were somewhere else in the same moment, somewhere deeper, somewhere more instinctive, somewhere that your brain learned long ago was the more important place to be. That kind of presence has a value that doesn't show up in the moment of introduction. It shows up later, in the quality of connection that gets built when someone realizes that you actually heard them. That you remember what they said. That you noticed the thing they didn't quite say but meant. That the conversation mattered to you in ways that went well beyond getting the details right. Most people, if given the choice between someone who remembers their name and someone who genuinely sees them, would not choose the name. You are not bad at people. You are, in a specific and documentable sense, very good at them. In ways that don't get counted in the social accounting we typically use to measure attentiveness. The forgetting and the depth exist on the same continuum. They are not opposites. They are the same thing from two different angles. There is nothing to fix here. There may be small practical strategies that help, and if they work for you, that's genuinely useful. But the more important shift is the one that happens when you stop treating the forgetting as a symptom of something wrong with you, and start recognizing it for what it actually is. A small and entirely predictable byproduct of a brain that was built for human beings, that learned to prioritize the parts of them that actually matter, and that has been quietly doing that work in every room it has ever entered. The name is gone. The person is still there, fully, in your memory, their face, their voice, the feeling of talking to them, the things they told you about their life. Your brain kept everything that is actually them. It just let go of the label. That's not absence. That's a very particular kind of attention. And it says something real about how you move through the world. Something that, once you see it clearly, you might find easier to be at peace with than you expected. If something in this landed in a way that felt accurate rather than just comforting, that's worth staying with. Because the way your brain handles names is connected to something much larger, a whole orientation toward people and experience and presence that shows up in more places than just introductions. There's a deeper pattern underneath this one. And if you're curious about what it looks like when you follow it all the way down, there's more here waiting for you.